Welcome to Shifting from Grudge to Grit, Grace, and Gratitude. And I have gratitude today for my lovely co host being here, no matter where she is in the city and what she's busy with, but she shows up every single time. So, really grateful for that. And then we got, how do I say your name? Mihika.
Mihika. Yep, that's it.
Oh, wonderful. I got it right. And all the way from Philadelphia.
Philadelphia.
Freezing cold Philadelphia that is.
Yeah.
So we are grateful for her too that she decided to wake up and be here at her 8:30 in the morning to come and grace us with her presence. So Jamila, I'm going to leave you to say hi, and Mahika, I'm going to leave you to say hi, and then I'll read your bio to the audience.
Perfect.
Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Grit, Grace, and Gratitude, and especially welcome to you, Mihika. We're so grateful to have you on. Can't wait to hear all your wisdom that you bring with you. And Anissa, always lovely to see you. Thank you so much. Yes, as usual, our Fridays are so hectic, but this is I think the one space that I look forward to every week because it's just my space where I'm comfortable, and this is the reason why we started the podcast to begin with, is to provide a platform for us just to come into and exhale as real and raw as we always are, and to listen to the wisdom of such our prestigious guests that we have on. And I think ever since we started, Anissa, it's progressively been getting better and better each week. And we have had the absolute pleasure. We've had the absolute pleasure and honor to have such amazing souls, such as yourself, Mihika. And I guess without
Yeah.
any further ado, Anissa, I'll leave it to you.
Yeah, I'll read her amazing bio. I'm intrigued to know more about the first 10. This is really the topic of today, the leadership strategy you've been overlooking.
Mhm.
So every week we say this, Mahika, that even if one guest only shows up or nobody, we look forward to getting the value and learning from our guests. So without further ado, I'll read a little bit about her bio. Mahika is a mindset and empowerment thought leader. I love that. I'm glad you didn't say coach. Dedicated to helping overwhelmed individuals transform chaos into confidence. As the founder of One Mighty Mama, she is passionate about guiding women to shift their mindsets and reclaim joy, whether they're navigating motherhood, caregiving, or the demands of daily life. You see already there, it's like you're talking to me. One Mighty Mama offers a unique coaching experience for those seeking clarity, strength, and a renewed sense of self. Through personalized coaching, public speaking, and workshop facilitation, Mahika empowers individuals to embrace their journeys with humor, heart, and powerful mindset strategies. Her mission is to equip each person with the tools and insights to thrive, ensuring that every mama feels mighty and empowered in her journey, no matter what form it may take. Welcome, Mahika. I'm looking forward to this conversation for whatever I'm going to take from it for myself as a single mama of three and a business owner.
Ah,
So, welcome.
thank you very much. I'm so excited to be here and to have this conversation with you and Jamila and your audience.
Absolutely. And we don't rehearse this. So, we start wherever you feel what inspired you to take on this hero's journey to discover One Mighty Mama. What was your own story in that? There's always a beautiful why behind it. And the hero's journey I like as a narrative arc because it kind of takes us on that journey. So over to you.
So my journey began in my grief. And it was about 5 years ago in 2020 that I lost my mom. And she is and always will be the OG Mighty Mama. And she taught me from a very young age, instilling those lessons within me that I can do anything that I put my mind to, that I can. And, I think it was truly when I became a mother that things really shifted for me. It was the first time where I felt like my foundation kind of went a little helter skelter, if you will. I kind of lost the vision of who I was. And she was able to identify that because she was like, this is different for you. And I think every woman has a different journey through motherhood. And so she always told me that I can do whatever I'd like. And not whatever I'd like, but whatever was meant for me and whatever I put my efforts into. So she was very clear on the path that it wouldn't be easy, but it would be worth it. And she showed me through her own example, having come to this country when I was only one, and come to America, leaving everything behind in India, and really starting fresh, starting with labor jobs and moving on to educating herself much later in life. When she was in her 50s, she went back to school. She became a pharmacy technician. She, was doing jobs that women or people in their 20s and 30s were doing, and thriving, doing well in those. So she was the original One Mighty Mama. And then when she passed, I felt like all of that energy and all of that strength came into me. And one thing she had always told me was, if I wanted to balance professional and personal life with motherhood, entrepreneurship was the way to go. And every time I took a new job, she would be like, what are you doing? Why are you taking yet another corporate job? And I always brushed her off. I was like, Mom, what do you know? Like, how am I supposed to, financially, survive in this world? And it wasn't until she was gone that I was able to really make that jump into entrepreneurship and start One Mighty Mama. So I'm really happy to say that I was raised by a mighty mama. She turned me into a mighty mama. And now I'm raising the next generation to also become one day mighty in their own sense.
Oh my word. I'm like tearing up because it's like such a beautiful tribute to your mom. And I mean, I can certainly feel, that power and that energy and that mightiness coming through you. But there's also a gentleness, such a beautiful gentleness within you. So, I mean, Jamila, I don't know from your side, I'm still processing all of what you just shared and
Uh,
how this came about and came to life. Wow.
I'm getting goosebumps listening to you. I
Mm.
had the honor of being a judge last night, Anissa, at a Mrs. Curvey Global. So it's literally a
Okay.
spin-off of the Mrs. South Africa, but it's um, celebrating women of the fuller figure, if you've been
Mm.
married or divorced, or just women at any phase or season in their life. And one of the ladies said that when she was in her 30s, um, when she was in her 20s and her mum was in her 40s, she felt like her mum was so old, until
Mm.
she got to her 40s and she realized that it's not old at all, and it's just a mindset, really.
Mm.
And I think that we as kids, and our kids as well, always look to us as being older, as our life being over at a certain age, until we get to that age and we realize that the opportunities are endless for us, irrespective. And I think that's what our parents, our mothers in particular, wanted to pass on down to us. And sometimes it takes a little bit more maturity from our point of view, or for us to become a little bit more seasoned in our lives to actually appreciate those lessons and understand the true value and importance of what they were teaching us, those golden nuggets that they would pass on
Yeah.
to us. So I absolutely resonate with you on that, Mihika. And I think for me, I came to that realization a little bit too late in my life, or I think it was taken away from
Just
me
a
because
thing.
I lost my mom when I was 18.
Mm.
So I
So
think
sorry.
the realizations only came in her absence. So for the ones that are still fortunate enough to have their mums in their lives, hold on to them, grab every bit of knowledge and wisdom, um, and experience that they have had, and use that to empower yourself and your life going forward.
I couldn't agree more.
So, Mahika,
And
when you spoke to the grief that you had earlier on, was it the grief of losing mom? And that was the catalyst for starting One Mighty Mama. Now, in that time of grief, one like who was by your side at that time? Who supported you? Who was your sacred space holder, or took on the role of almost another mighty mama or mighty sister of sorts, or brother, whoever that might have been for you. So I'm just keen to discover that and curious to hear who that might have been for you.
so I've been very blessed to have a pretty significant village, if you will, surrounding me. And this experience not only brought me closer to my brother, his wife. I mean, between my husband and I, and my brother and his wife, the four of us were kind of going through very similar things, right? Having been like the children. I only have one brother, so between being the children of and having lost a mother. Um, and I would say one mighty mama. I mean, my husband was a huge support. I have to give him that. I think there were times, especially in the beginning, where I mean, the drop of a pin and I would start crying. It honestly didn't take much, and it took me a long time even to share the story without crying. Initially, I would share the story, and I couldn't get through it without just breaking down and saying, "Excuse me, I need a moment to like gather myself again." So it was only maybe in the last 2 years that I could start sharing the story without breaking down. And I would say another unexpected confidant that came, that has always been a part of my life, but from a very long time, is my mother-in-law. And so we live together, and I know when I send her this, she's gonna she's gonna get very emotional as well. But we've always had a little bit of a difficult relationship, and but always coming back to the love, right? And it was at this time that she really stood up and showed me, and in her own ways as well, how she is a mighty mama. And I don't think I acknowledge her as much as I should, but thinking back to that question, because I've never been asked that before, she truly was somebody who kind of really truly has always deserved to be in that role, but like really truly stepped up into it after I lost my mom, and really helped me, supported me, and has always been my biggest cheerleader when it comes to One Mighty Mama. And so I would answer to your question, I would have to say my mother-in-law.
A beautiful gift indeed, because most people's relationships with their in-laws is quite either estranged or difficult or complex. So a lovely gift, and even in the difficult relationships, there are gifts for us.
Our gifts,
So yeah,
exactly. And it's in our best interest to look for those gifts. That's something I'm always
absolutely.
seeking out. And I'm very
Absolutely.
grateful.
I do want to come back to something, but I'm going to hand over to Jamila, and just I know she's dying from her energy
No,
to ask
I just love
something.
that story. I really do love that story, of your mom-in-law actually taking on the namesake, that she is your mom, in fact. And it's so refreshing to hear such a positive story, about daughters-in-law and mums-in-law actually being mom and daughter. And I remember my mom telling me that, remember when you get married, and this was when I was quite young, but she always said this, and she said this to prospective brides as well, is that a key to a successful marriage is to remove the in-laws. When you enter into this union, that's your mom and your dad, And if you view them as this, then you will have success in your marriage, because you will immediately get the respect of your husband, and you will get their respect as well. So I'm so happy, and to hear that, and that you've had such a positive experience. And shout out to your mom-in-law as well. I have to say one thing as well, that I am just so like overwhelmed with, in such a positive note, is the name that you've come up with. It just speaks volumes. It's got so much of strength and weight behind it. I absolutely love it.
It truly does. And I remember when I first started the business, a lot of people, when I first started my company, a lot of them would say, "Oh, mighty, like it's a physical strength." And I've been on a very strong like physical journey as well. So I do a lot of lifting, and I work on keeping myself physically healthy. But it's not really the reason why I chose the name. Mighty Mama has nothing to do with physical strength. It has everything to do with your mental strength. And that is why I felt so aligned with that name, because if you have a strong mind, everything else kind of comes into play. So for example, this morning when I woke up, my alarm rings at like 5 a.m. and I'm like, oh, I don't want to go to the gym. Like it's going to be a tough workout. I'm not looking forward to it. But I told myself, you know what? I'm just going to put my big girl pants on and I'm going to go, and we're going to make this happen. And did I enjoy it? I did once I was there, but was I excited about it beforehand? Not so much. But that's the thing. If you have that mighty mindset, if you're mentally strong, then strength just comes to you in other ways.
Yeah, and it's just about getting over, that lazy mindset, I would
Yes.
say, or just, getting caught up in that feelings of, I just want to call it a day. I want the day to end.
Yes,
Or I'm
exactly.
not ready just yet to begin it. But like you said, I mean, and I felt this, and Anissa, I haven't been feeling too well recently,
Yes.
and I have been absolutely suffering from FOMO with paddle. And I finally did book a match, and then I was like, oh, I really don't want to go. But again, you say to yourself that just get ready, put your big girl panties on, and I know that I'm going to feel better once I've already started. And that's exactly what happens. 5 minutes into it, or not even that long,
Mhm.
the minute that you're stepping into the gym or onto the court or wherever it is that you may be, and you're meeting people, you already have that change in mindset and looking forward to something. And then you realize at the end of that hour or 1.5 hours, however long the time period is, I'm so glad I didn't give in to just
Yes.
staying in bed.
Yes.
Yeah,
So glad I didn't give in to the lazy mindset, right? Because it's so easy to do.
absolutely.
So ladies, I mean, you putting me to shame because I'm still sitting in the lazy mindset where physical fitness is. I pray that I'm going to get there soon because, to your point, Mahika, is as much as you want a strong mind, they work in synchronicity with one another. They're interdependent of each other.
You really
Healthy
are.
body, healthy mind as well. So I want to come back to your first 10 leadership strategies. Tell us, where does this fit into that? And then we also mentioned in our write-up, from boardrooms to busy moms, you're going to remind us how leadership starts long before the title. And we spoke about it being mindset, presence, and the courage to show up differently. Talk us through that. I still have my other question, but I'm going to leave it for later
Okay.
because I want to learn more about your method. And I like the fact that it's a leader with no title. I don't know if you've ever read the book from Robin
No.
Sharma.
Okay. I think I need to add that to my list. Okay.
Yes, the leader with no title, and he's also the author of the 5 a.m. Club, so I think you would love him.
That one I've read. That one I've
And The
read.
Monk Who Sold His Ferrari. So he's got some really good books. He's one of the most renowned personal development gurus and authors out
Mhm.
there, and he's really old school, but I quite like him. And he speaks about the holy hour: 20 minutes of prayer, 20 minutes of exercise, and 20 minutes of learning or journaling and reflection. So I'd love to gauge from you, what is this 10 leadership um, what is it? First, why is it called the first 10 actually? What is it? The first 10 characteristics, the first 10 steps?
Nope. It's the
Enlighten
first
us.
10 minutes.
Oh, okay.
10 minutes. And
Yikes.
here's where it really came into my life and really just changed the game for me is that when I was struggling in the early days of motherhood, my kids are now 14 and 12. So this was at least 10, 11 years ago. I remember starting off my day being in such a reactive mode, right? Like you wake up, the alarm kind of jars you rather violently, and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm late. I have to go do all these things. And I took small breaks each time the kids were born. So I stayed at home with them for about a year and a half to 2 years each time around. But when I remember so clearly my first job that I had taken when my son was 2, maybe 2.5. So it was my first time going back to work with 2 kids. And I remember those mornings waking up and just feeling consistently behind the 8 ball. Just like the day was already running and I was just struggling to catch up. I would, as soon as I woke up, I'm like, okay, I'm very mission oriented. Got to get the kids ready. Got to get myself ready. Got to get lunches packed. Got to get, myself looking presentable. And then I have to make myself, get to work. And it was a difficult time. Those were the days where I can clearly remember my physical health suffered, my mental health suffered. And I knew I needed to change something. And that's where the first 10 came in. And when we think of morning routines, right? That's essentially what it is. It's a truncated version of the holy hour, where hour is a lot to ask. It's a lot to ask of women professionals, women who are stay-at-home moms, women who are just overwhelmed and on the brink of burnout. An hour is a long time to think, oh, can I weed that out for myself? So the first 10 is really your entry point. If you can carve out 10 minutes for yourself, and there's 3 areas that it encompasses: mind, body, and focus, right? If you can take a few moments to take some deep breaths, right? Express your gratitude. What are you grateful for in the morning? Just take a few moments, right? It does not have to be this long drawn out thing. Then you shift onto the body side, which is another, just a few moments. Get up, stretch, get those crunchies out from, being in bed for 8 hours, hopefully 8 hours, right? And then lastly, your focus. What are your priorities for the day? What are your intentions for the day? And I always say, pick your power word. What is the word that's going to describe how you're showing up today? And when you put all that together, it encompasses the first 10. And I always like to stress, this is not self-care. This is not self-care. Self-care is your bubble bath. Self-care is your manicure, pedicure. Self-care is, getting a nice blowout, getting a massage. All those things are self-care. Those are necessary, but we always kind of tend to put them into the nice to have bucket. Your first 10 is not the nice to have. This is a need to have. This is the leadership tool that helps you show up as the best version of yourself. If you take those few moments and stop to think. So for example, when I went through my first 10 this morning, I chose my power word. And my power word for today was to be powerful. I wanted to come onto this podcast and share this time with you lovely ladies and share my power, share my mightiness. And I wanted to show up as that, so that people can see what is the transformation. I was raised by the OG Mighty Mama, but she taught me to be a Mighty Mama. And I am showing up every day, even when I don't want to, as that version of me. And that's why I think if we can show up that way and we can build out that intentionality, it helps us be the mightiest version of ourselves, that when we walk into the boardroom, when we walk into the emergency room or the operating room or whichever room that we are walking into, we show up with strength. We show up with mightiness because we have taken that moment to invest in ourselves, and so that we can lead ourselves that way. And that is the whole concept of self-leadership, of leading yourself, being your own CEO. We are in charge, because I always like to say, if you don't do it during the first 10 minutes of your day, someone or something else will. So it's up to you. Who do you want leading your day?
I love that. And I love the fact that you mentioned that whenever it is that we want to set aside some time for ourselves, we look at it as if it's some luxury that we are affording ourselves, but it's a necessity. And it's something that only we can do for us, because like you said, if we don't do it, something else is going to occupy that space and time.
There's a line of things waiting to take up space in your mind.
Yeah, and I read something the other day, and it said that take your phone and leave it at night in your bathroom, so that when you get up in the morning, you have those 5 or 10 or 15 minutes where you just focus on yourself. Because if we have our phone on the side of our bed, that's the
within
first
arm's reach.
pick up, right? We pick it up and we're already starting now. The wheels are turning. I've got to do this, that, 10 other things. But if we don't have that and we cut that off completely, leave it in another room, then you get up and you have that time, even if it's 5 minutes. 10 minutes, fantastic. That's wonderful. But it's about creating that habit, those small atomic habits, those bite-sized chunks with which we then add on to, and it becomes our behaviors, which is the way that it should be. We should be giving ourselves that time. And like you said, just give yourself that first 10 minutes, because when you show up to wherever you're showing up to, you are already empowered to making that good first impression. And that's another thing that I've learned, is that you'd never get a second chance at making a first impression. So in order for you to be the best that you can be, to portray yourself in that, you've got to give yourself that time and not look at it as a luxury, but rather a necessity that you owe to yourself.
I couldn't agree more. You nailed
So
it right.
ladies,
You nailed it right on the head, Jamila.
ladies, we are almost halfway through. I just want to acknowledge those that are here on Instagram. Zolani says also the book Mind Power, he would recommend, which you can get it online. I don't know who that is by. It sounds familiar, but I'm not sure who that is by. And then we have him also saying, I love what you're sharing. Yes, we all love what's being shared here right now. It's very useful and practical. And I think what I like what you're saying is 10 minutes feels achievable. It doesn't feel like a whole mission. And when you said you a mama on a mission, I was like, you're a mighty mama on a mission. It's the triple M factor here. It's like
There you go.
you've got to make sure that you are at least investing in yourself in that 10 minutes. And 10 minutes is nothing, And Jamila, I agree with you. I think I need to do this practice, but I don't think I'm going to leave it in my bathroom. I'm going to leave it downstairs. Then I don't want to come down to come and fetch your phone. And that 10 minutes then becomes even more achievable. What I want to come back to is your mom's advice to you that you should not be employed in a formal capacity, and that to really raise your kids in the way that you want to be this mighty mama, you would need to take on entrepreneurship. So Jamila and I are both entrepreneurs, and I know there are many that are listening in that are also entrepreneurs. Welcome, Azra. Azra, I know, is an entrepreneur. Those that are on the Instagram. So what advice do you have? Because you mentioned a few pertinent things, and I can certainly resonate with that. Being a single mom, we keep mentioning this, is that you get torn between the comfortable paycheck at the end of the month versus living with purpose. What was your deciding factor to eventually listen to your mighty mama to do entrepreneurship?
So what really got to me was is that in the immediate aftermath, so this was in 2020. So we were all on lockdown, right? No one was really going into the office. And the company that I was working for was a global company. They had headquarters in London, but they had offices all over the place, US and otherwise. And so my job was a traveling job. And all of a sudden I was no longer able to travel. And what I found was is that in those initial days, I got a lot of leeway from my manager, and I was very grateful for that. I had almost maybe 6 to 8 weeks of like unofficial leave because things were slow, and I wasn't in the mental state to be doing anything productive at work at the time. And I think the real nudge that came to me was I realized that no one is looking out for my best interests. Everybody is looking out for their own best interest. And somehow I convinced myself that if I became valuable enough as an employee, that narrative would change. And of course, no matter what I did, no matter how many hours I put in, no matter how many successful stories I get from my clients, it wasn't enough to have them think about me first. It was always about them first. And I think the tipping point came to me in the new year where I had had a very difficult fall. November, December were very, very taxing months. Lots of big projects, lots of strain that it required of me. And it was in January, I was always promised, hey, things will get better. And they didn't. It was just more of the same story. And I realized, you know what? There's no end to this. So if I want to end it, it's got to be on my terms. And so I made the difficult decision. Thankfully, my husband was right there in my, my right hand guy, and was so supportive. In fact, it was his idea to say, why don't you take a step back and just stop and, reevaluate things, just get a clear mind, get some perspective on things. And that is what helped me do it. And with God's grace, he was doing so great at work. He ended up getting a really great promotion, just a few months later. And so the numbers were adding up in a good way. So it helped it make sense. But what I do want to stress is that position that I was in is not something that everybody is afforded, right? It was definitely a difficult move for me to make, but because it made sense for us, we were able to do it. I work with so many clients who are like, hey, that's not in the books for me, right? Like for whatever reason, entrepreneurship is definitely not for the faint of heart, as I'm sure both of you know. So what can we do if we are still in the workforce, right? I still have an employer. I still have a boss. How can I exercise some of that mightiness? And here's what I always tell them. One is clear communication, right? Always be clear. If you have boundaries that need to be set, if you need to leave early on a particular day because your child has soccer practice, for instance, and you don't want to miss it, let them know and work out a plan. Be like, I can either come in early or I can work later on another day, or find a solution that is amenable to everybody. But you have to be clear and open about your communication, and you have to be you have to figure out what your boundaries are. Because if you don't, then again, it's one of those things. If you don't set that intention, if you don't set those boundaries, then someone or something else will. And so if it's important to you, let them know, have the conversation. I'm not saying that they'll always, agree, but you've had the conversation. There are managers out there who will do that for you. But this was something I never did in my professional life. Like this mightiness that I'm feeling, if I feel like it's a transformation that I'm also going through, and feeling more mighty today than I was yesterday.
I love that, Anissa. I just want to share here also is that, and this is coming from me being a stay-at-home mom for 10 years. I was, I didn't study, I didn't work or anything like that. And then I found myself divorced, and then I had to, fend for myself and my child. And what I'd like to just share about motherhood for those ladies who are in similar situation as I am, or who haven't been fortunate enough, I do apologize for the background noise, but just women who haven't had the privilege of being in the workspace or in a corporate setting or working, or being employed, and the insecurity that they may feel. It's so important to understand that motherhood is leadership that doesn't get any applause, right? For most, for most moms. But it builds human beings, okay? And that for me is leadership at its highest level. And this is something that we tend to ignore as women who haven't been in that corporate space. We tend to ignore it. We tend to think that this is just what we are meant to be doing, and there's no value. It's no, it's seen as the most underpaid job in the world, and it's the most important job in the world. Okay, so for me, anyone who's in this space, this is what they need to realize: is that the tools that you have just by being a mother are all that you need, whether in any scenario that you can be placed in, whether it's in a boardroom or whether it's, owning your own business or whatever it is. And I truly believe that the home is the first boardroom that women will ever lead in. Okay, and we just don't give enough credit to the strategy, the emotional intelligence, and the resilience that you are required to just naturally have to be successful and exist in this space. So for me, that's really, really important to know. And now I can say it. I was filled with doubts. I was filled with insecurities at the time when I had to enter into the workspace. But slowly, step by step, with each mistake that you make, you become stronger, and all of these skills that are inherently already within you is what will power you on to be successful should you wish to take that step out onto the entrepreneurial space.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. I love that.
Yeah, I mean, so some of your trials and tribulations along the way of entrepreneurship, do you want to share some of that? I always like, and how you've overcome them. What of your leadership attributes did you connect with, or what about your mighty mama's skill set and talents and values that you say became inherently who you are showing up as today, or having your mighty man by your side?
Yes. I like that.
Your mighty man by your side. I mean, so in the difficult times, as an entrepreneur now that you've taken on that journey, how do you kind of hold it together or ground yourself? Is it another 10 minute just sit aside and regroup? Please share with us any tips and guidance that our audience might find valuable.
Yeah. So before I dive into how I address those trials and tribulations, I do want to reflect on my mighty man. I love that, by the way. Never really thought about it that way. Um, he is my ultimate like reflection board, right? I can give him the unfiltered thoughts, the good, the bad, the ugly, all of it. The days when things are not going my way, or maybe a pitch didn't go as successfully as I'd hoped, or a presentation didn't go as I'd expected. He is my ultimate reflection board, and he always gives me those unfiltered thoughts back. So find that person. I'm not saying it's got to be a spouse or a partner, but find that person who you can give your unfiltered truth to, and who can who is in your camp, right? Who is by your side, who is looking out for your best interests always. And get that type of feedback from them, because that is key. Now, moving into those trials and tribulations, one thing that has really been the overarching message for me here is you have to get comfortable. Oh, hello, look at that. Hello, buddy. You have to get comfortable doing the uncomfortable. And what I mean by that is, initially it was, I'm trying to understand, those things that are making me uncomfortable. And now I'm actively seeking out environments that make me uncomfortable. And I don't mean like uncomfortable in an unhealthy way. I mean, for example, I am actively seeking out rooms where I don't know all the people that are there. This week, I've done so much networking, which is it just happened to be the way it fell into place this week. But I walked into at least 4 or 5 different rooms with 50, 60, 100 women who all seem to know each other and I know none of them. How do
Wow.
I step into those rooms and hold my own? How do I walk into those rooms and start having conversations and represent myself in the mightiest way possible? And it all comes down to this. It comes down to that intention. And that's why I'm calling it a leadership strategy, because there's
Mhm.
one of two ways that scenario can unfold, right? The first is that I walk in and I'm like, oh my gosh, all of these people know each other and I'm the odd man out. Like I am the true fish out of water. I think I'm just going to be a wallflower and just sit here and observe. Or forget wallflower, maybe I'll just leave, right? Like I don't have to be here. So that's the first option, right? And the second option is this: is take a moment, go back and reflect back to that power word that you have created for yourself, that intention. Maybe the word is brave. Maybe the word is vulnerable, right? Go back to that word and think, okay, how can I be brave today? I'm going to have maybe 2 real conversations. I give myself a little bit of a goal. I'm going to have 2 genuine conversations with people that I don't know. And so I walk up and I always put a smile on my face and I extend my hand and I say, hi, my name is Mihika. What's yours? So nice to meet you. And that usually is just enough to get the ball rolling. But you have to be willing to put yourself in those situations that make you step out of your comfort zone. And now I get almost a little bit of a high from these types of things. And I'm like, okay, I'm actively on the hunt. What else can I do that takes me a little bit more out of my comfort zone? So, for instance, today at the gym, I was challenged to do push-ups, and for me, push-ups are always difficult. I just the upper body strength, especially with age and all that good stuff. Um, but I had a friend who gave me a really great tip. And that tip helped me to get really good form and to do those push ups. But it was something that made me uncomfortable. The idea of it made me uncomfortable. But with the right support, I was able to do it. And so when it comes to the trials and tribulations that women face or that anyone really faces in entrepreneurship, it's really just that you have to get uncomfortable. And initially, it'll feel very uncomfortable. There's a lot of friction. But the more you do it, the less uncomfortable it gets. And then you move on to other things, right? That make you even more uncomfortable. And that's how you grow. That's how you
Yeah.
develop.
That's beautiful. What I'm also hearing you say is stepping to your power. Go and it's like a reclamation of sorts, like let me go and reclaim my sovereignty that I have somewhere along the way left behind. Because we've all been born with divinity and mightiness and bravery and all those
Inherent
beautiful
grace.
adjectives. Yes. So it's how do we reconnect with that? How do we come back home to that version? Because somewhere along the line, somebody told us, no, you can't do this. Or actually, no, 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 go and get the job. You need to be providing. Or no, 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 whatever it is. So we end up listening to those noises and forgetting the authentic voice, our own voice. It's similar to what you said earlier on. What you said earlier on was almost like no one's coming to save you. Yeah, nobody cares. They really just so self-indulgent, focus on their own lives to no fault of their own. I think
Mhm.
people are just going through the most right now at a global scale. I mean, I've got an 18-year-old that's talking about wanting to go to the States. And this morning I sent him, I don't know if you know the guy from Mind Valley, the owner of Mind Valley.
No.
Anyway, bottom line is he got to the States and 2 FBI agents stopped him and asked him, what is he doing there? Interrogated him. And he's really there in terms of professional, personal development in the realm of that. And he's done some incredible work, and yet he was stopped. So if
Mm.
he wasn't in his power, and again, it's not just that this is about mighty mums, it is a conversation for the mighty men out there, because one of the
Absolutely.
guys just said now, I'm in that journey of entrepreneurship as well to boost my art. There are men also going through this. So it is a reclamation of what do I love? What am I worthy and deserving of? What are those gifts and talents that I've just kind of put aside? And why can't I do all of it? Why can't I be a mighty mom or a mighty man, do my entrepreneurship journey and do whatever side hustles if you are in a formal employed capacity? So I love what you're saying in terms of get uncomfortable because you're never quite going to know until you put yourself in that position. And
Mhm.
don't be afraid to fail, I suppose, because fail is not a fail. How
No,
would you perceive failure?
so how I perceive failure is I consider it to be information. I've
Yes.
just found another way that this problem cannot be solved. And when I look at it that way, then it's like, again, I'm back into the hunting mode. I consider this to be something I talk about a lot is hunting, right? Like being on the active search for something. And in this case, I'm on the active search for a solution. And if I take that failure and let it be, okay, well, you know what? This problem wasn't even worth solving, which is generally what we tend to do, right? We fail at something and we think, you know what? I'm not even going to try anymore. And we take that as a door slammed shut in our face and we regress, right? We give away that power to the failure. What you should be doing is you should think about that failure as information on how not to do it. And then you have to stop and think, what is one small factor that I can tweak here? And let me try it that way. And so, for example, something I was just thinking about last night was we were out to dinner with some friends, my husband and I, and I was reminded we had gone to a restaurant, and this was the restaurant where I went to lick my wounds and shed a couple tears after a particularly bad professional workshop connection that I had had. And I thought to myself, I'm never going to do another workshop again. Like, what was the point of that? It was a phenomenal failure on all levels. But then I had to stop and think. Of course, after I licked my wounds and had a good meal and everything, I had to stop and think, what could I have done differently? And now that experience taught me here's 5 things that I could do differently. And those are my 5 non-negotiables now. Next time, whenever I am negotiating another workshop, I put those things into my contract. I'm like, these are non-negotiables. If you cannot give me these, then I'm not doing it. Because I learned the hard way that when I ignored those things, it became a failure. And so this overall process, I like to call failing forward. It's, you're not falling back. It's not taking anything away from you. It's actually enhancing what you do because now you are getting that boost forward from doing this,
Yeah,
from having
I love.
experienced it.
I think we should also start to reframe how we see our experiences in life, right? Because then we remove that whole aspect of failure out of our mindset. Because we're having one experience after another, which allows you to just improve on who you are as a person. And I think another thing that we need to reframe is that we aren't just particular, we don't just fill one particular role throughout our lives. We have the capability of change. None of us, are static. We're continuously changing. We're multidimensional, and as a result of that, through each season of our life, we are different. So obviously, what we want to do, what we like to do, what interests us is also going to be different. And we need to embrace this. There was something that I learned and or just became so clear to me last night over the last 2 days, actually, when I was with these ladies who were part of this pageant. First of all, I had to check myself because when you think of beauty pageant, you always have these preconceived notions,
Very
of a pretty
Yep.
face, and that's all that it is, and you don't see any depth into it. And I think that what I stood back and I have a renewed um, pride for women who have the courage and the bravery to actually partake in something like this, because I've learned that they have so much of depth. And these are women who are more or less, late 30s, 40s, into their 50s, who have been brave enough to embark on putting themselves out there in more ways than one, And I realized when I went through the interview processes and reading about these women that they are so multidimensional. They're not just a lawyer or a doctor or a chartered accountant or a housewife. There are so many other roles that they have um, collected to become who they are, these powerful, amazing, incredible women that they are. And I think that's how we need to see ourselves and to accept that we have the power to be as many personas as we wish to be. And I think that it's important for us to reframe this in our minds because we were brought up to believe that we are only successful if we've gone to school, gone to university, qualified in a certain field, and that's all that we are meant to be. But we're actually not because we have the propensity and the capacity to do such amazing, wonderful,
Yes.
life-changing, game-changing, roles. And I think it's so important for us to understand that and forget about failure and to be brave enough to just step into whichever role that we wish to. Because if you put your mind to it, there's nothing at all that will stop you from achieving it.
Absolutely. Yes, yes. No, I completely agree. And I think the multi hyphenate is very, very real. We do not have to limit ourselves or pigeonhole ourselves to just our professional identity. We can have multiple professional identities, and we can then, use all of those experiences combined to help us really truly step into our mightiness. So by no means do we need to be limiting ourselves at all. So I completely agree. I love that.
Mihika, you know what has been going through my mind here as we're talking about all these beautiful adjectives? Have you ever thought about mighty and the word mighty and actually breaking it down even further? So M is for mighty, I
Oh,
is for inspiring,
okay. Oh,
G is graceful, and well, whatever else you want to add to it. I was just
yeah.
thinking,
I
imagine you had to
haven't.
break that down into like into your program even. I mean, this is off the back here
But that's a
because
lovely idea. I thought I've broken it down in terms of the definition, but not like by the individual letters. But I like that. Okay. I'm going
yeah,
to
I'm thinking about your
go with
mom,
that.
like your mom. Like, what are the things that made her mighty, and how would you describe it in the different letters of the word mighty? You could, that's a tribute even more so to
Yes.
her.
Yes. That 100% is. And it's like, I really think back to her. I think she really stepped into her mightiness in the last like 10 to 15 years of her life. And just I can envision some of those conversations that I had with her because there were a lot of things that were kind of eating her up inside. But really thinking about that and like, it's all these things. And this is the thing that's just it is one of my biggest life regrets that I didn't stop to reflect on these things until after she was gone.
Mm,
I didn't realize just how incredible she was. I mean, of course I loved her and I thought I thought the moon and the stars of her. But like really seeing this mightiness in her, it
mm,
was not
mm,
something because I was so busy, right? We're just
mm,
always so perpetually busy. Like it was just one season into the next. And I mean, honestly, those initial years with the kids, those 4 or 5 years were just a blur. Like my kids
yes.
love looking at home videos of us from that time when they were younger. And I remember thinking back, and the video is always of them because I'm usually the one taking it or somebody else is taking it. And you can hear my voice in the background. And sometimes I
Mm,
try to think, what was I doing in that moment? Oh, that's right. I was, knee deep in cooking or the dishes or cleaning or
yeah.
something. Like I was in the kitchen or I was folding laundry or, it was just a time in my life where I felt like things were happening around me, but I wasn't necessarily, fully present in those
Mm.
moments. Um,
Well, but if I think about it, as much as you're saying you regretted not having been more present, I think that as we're going through the grief, as you've mentioned when we started this conversation, you know, it's in the grief, it's in the darkness that the lotus flower blooms, and you're never going to get the insight, the wisdom, the magic elixir, as they call it in the hero's journey, to come back. You know, and so that's why I was asking that question also around if you had to break down the word mighty, what how would you describe the magic elixir? What is the wisdom behind one mighty mama? You know, and I think it's something for reflection for all of us, not just your mom or the concept, but if we are these mighty men and women, so that we are
Mhm.
inclusive, like, what does it need to represent, you know, if we had to put it into? I know we've only got 5 minutes left, so that's more for reflection. I don't know if Jamila has anything more she wants to ask you, and if you maybe have anything you are burning to share with us that we haven't touched on yet today.
Yes, one thing I definitely want to share is going back to that hunting, right? One thing that has truly been a game changer for me, and it's a component of the first 10, is gratitude hunting. It's being
Mm,
on the active lookout. And, it seems so small, right? It seems such a small thing because you take maybe just a minute or two, or maybe you jot down a small sentence in your gratitude journal. And I remember thinking to myself, I always thought so macro. um, such big things. Oh, I'm grateful for my health. I'm grateful for my kids. I'm grateful for, this beautiful home that I live in, right? Like I get to eat and, really basic things, but like very big things. And I had to stop. I had to stop that because, eventually after like what, 7 or 8 things, you're like, okay, now I'm just going to cycle. I'm going to go back to the beginning of that list. I'm grateful for my health. I'm grateful for my kids. And the whole practice started to lose its meaning. And then I had
yes.
to stop and tell myself, I need to think more micro. Think small. Think about, oh, I just bought that really nice pair of shoes. That is the perfect combination of comfortable yet professional, and I can wear it to all my networking events and not worry about. And that was what I was grateful for that day. And what it really did, I know we're almost wrapping up, so I'll be quick, is put me in that mindset of being on the lookout for things to be grateful for. It's almost like putting on those rose tinted glasses, if you will. And like all of a sudden you see the world so differently. And even when bad things happen, you're looking for that silver lining, right? You're looking for, hey, what is the good that came out of this? Because if you look hard enough, you'll find something that was positive about any experience. And I think when we train our minds to do that over time, that's why the first 10 is so key. Do it over time. Do it for, start small, do it for a long time, do it consistently, and watch how your life changes.
Beautiful. Jamila, you're
Oh,
on
you're
mute.
Yeah, sorry about that. That is beautiful. I love that. And you're so right. It's about the small things that we take for granted, and we don't realize that those small things are actually the big things in our lives. And, for me, I was having a conversation with a friend of mine today, and she's in almost 70 now, and she's just had to move house. So it's been a really, really difficult time for
mm,
her because, as you know, moving house is literally,
stressful.
the same as experiencing a divorce or a death, or because it's so taxing on you. And she literally said, please, can we just have a cup of coffee? And she sounded like she was going to break down at any
Mm,
moment. She says that, I can't do this, I'm overwhelmed. And it's been about a month since she's moved, but she is a perfectionist as well. And she's just kept on speaking about the things that are just not right in the house. And I said to her, let's start looking at all the things that you have achieved in this month, and about all the things that have gone right in the move. And she stopped and she said, I never ever thought about that. We're so quick to look at everything that has gone wrong that we just overlook all the good that we have and that we're blessed with in our life. And it's just normal and natural. And I said to her, and this might sound a little bit morbid, but what helps me every day of my life is, let me live my life as if today is my last day,
oh,
right? If today is my last day, I'm intentional throughout the day to appreciate every little experience that I have. Just getting up in the morning and seeing my son and just being so grateful for that. Or my cat, or the fact that I can get up and go to the gym. And it's all those little things that we forget about that we are so blessed to have. The minute that you sit down and you write those little things, like I said, those are the big things. And those are the things that count to making our lives as meaningful as they are.
Absolutely.
Ladies, this has been a power hour of notes and lots of golden nuggets. I want to give you the last say, Mahika. If there is one final golden nugget of wisdom that you live and swear by, what would that be that you want to leave the audience with?
It would simply be this: mightiness is not a learned trait. Everyone already has that inherent mightiness inside of them. It's just up to us to help give it the environment in which it can grow. So if you can do that, live with intention, be on the hunt for those things that you are grateful for, look for the good in things. That is, stepping out of your comfort zone. These are all things that you can do to step into your own mightiness, because it's already there. Just you have to help bring it out.
Ah, like we started and I was getting all teary-eyed, and now we're ending and she's going to leave me almost with being teary-eyed. So on that note, thank you for those that have been here. Zolani says thank you for this as well. Everyone that stayed with us, we appreciate you on Instagram and on YouTube. It's been an amazing, insightful session, and it's been very useful and valuable to me too personally. And I thank you for being here with us. And Jamila, wonderful to have you here, even though you're at a golf day. I appreciate you more than you know. When we do end the live, Mahika, don't go away. We normally do a short debrief before we go.
Okay,
So
absolutely.
bye from me to everyone until next week, same time. And then over to you just to say goodbye.
I just also want to echo Mihika's last words because I thought that was so powerful. And for all the mamas out there who are overwhelmed, each one of us has a mighty version of ourselves, and all we need to do is to claim it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I love this chance to have this chat with both of you and with your audience. So thank you again. I'm so grateful.
All right. I'll end the
Thanks.
live. Do stay with us.